إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له لا معبود بحق سواه. وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله، عبدا لا يعبد ورسولا لا يكذب. ثم ما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من البدع والفتن ما ظهر منها وما بطن. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we ask for His guidance, and we ask for His forgiveness. And we seek refuge by Allah from the evils of ourselves and the evil consequences of our bad deeds. Whomsoever Allah give guidance, no one can lead astray, and whomsoever Allah lets to go astray, no one will be able to guide. And I bear witness there is no deity worthy of worship but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His final messenger. Verily, the best of speech is the book of Allah, and the best of guidance is the guidance of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And verily, the worst matters of this religion are the newly innovated matters. For every newly innovated matter in the religion is an innovation, and every innovation is a misguidance, and every misguidance will lead His people to the hellfire. Ikhwati fillah, my dear respected brothers, أشهد الله أن يحبكم جميعا في الله. Make Allah my witness. I love everyone who says La ilaha illallah for the sake of Allah. So today's khutbah, I was planning to talk about the importance of keeping time, but I think I have to change the subject. I really apologize for coming late. I had a couple of detours, so I know you're on a schedule, but I'll try to make it fixed and to the point, inshallah. It's not about keeping time, it was a joke, so for those who didn't get it. So. In fact, I want to briefly talk to you about the principle that you'll hear a lot of lectures about positive thinking and non-Islamic lectures, and the way you should always think positively no matter what circumstances around you, and all these motivational speaking that you find it on YouTube, and a lot of you are very familiar with that. The problem is many of us don't know that this is one of the core principles of our deen. In fact, it's one of the very first things that were taught to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I'm to ask you which story of the prophets, which prophet was mentioned to our Prophet first in the Quran? A lot of us, if you think about it, if you don't know the answer, you'll think maybe Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim is the father of all the prophets, all the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the prophets of Banu Israel, and then our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is from the descendant of Ibrahim alayhi salam. But it's not Ibrahim. Maybe it's Musa alayhi salam, Moses. The first story that was told to our Prophet, a prominent prophet, is the most mentioned story in the Quran, 73 times mentioned in the story of Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, or maybe Jesus, peace be upon him. He was the last prophet just before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you'll be surprised that the very first story, the second surah that was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Surah Al-Qalam, and the very first Nabi, prophet that was mentioned is the Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. He's not a very prominent prophet. We don't differentiate of any of the prophets, peace be upon all of them, but he's not one of the four Ulul Azm min al-Rusul, for example, the four most important prophets. So what's the point of mentioning this story to the Prophet ﷺ at the very first beginning? If you reflect on the story of Yunus alayhi salam, you'll see that all the prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send them with one message. You go tell your people, this is the message. And you'll find throughout history, some people, a few people will follow, and a lot of people will reject. And it was the same story with Yunus alayhi salam. Many people rejected his prophecy. They didn't follow the prophet, his prophecy. They didn't follow the pathway. They didn't want to accept his da'wah. So Yunus alayhi salam started to make da'wah and work hard, and no one is listening to him. And then one day he looked and he knew the stories from the previous nations, and he found a big storm coming, and he said, oh, that's it. Those people will be doomed. My people, there is no hope in them. And he decided that because there is no hope, there's no point from me giving dawah to those people who will be destroyed anyway. I will leave this city. He was in a city called Nineveh in Iraq. I will leave the city, cast a ship. You all know the story. Were thrown into the sea, swallowed by a whale. And imagine Yunus alayhi salam, who was desperate from his people. Now he's sitting in the belly of a whale, inside the ocean or inside the sea, in the darkness of the night. How much more desperate can a person get? It cannot get worse than that. But Yunus alayhi salam, alayhi wa ala nabiyyina afdal salatu taslim, he learned his lesson. And in this very desperate moment, he raised his hand and he said, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min adh-dhalimin. He had hope at this point. Many years later, our Prophet ﷺ was sent with the same message of all the messengers. And you know that he was rejected in Mecca for 13 years. 13 years he's calling his people, and only a few people accepted the da'wah. But not only they left him alone, they didn't accept, no, they started to torture him, kill the companions, stop him from conveying the message, until the Prophet ﷺ, he said, well, if Mecca is not accepting the message, let's go to another city. Let me go to Al-Ta'if. He went to Al-Ta'if, and we all know the story. What happened in Al-Ta'if was even worse than what happened in Mecca. They didn't just reject his message. They said, we will humiliate you the way that no one was humiliated. They sent kids throwing him with stones, that he started, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I just want you to just picture this. This man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's 53 years old. Just picture your father or someone you respect at this age running, and kids are throwing him with stones. And he's running in the heat of the desert. That he lost his shoes and his feet started bleeding. Because he didn't do anything but just conveying a message. He's trying to convey a message. And amidst this situation, in the darkness of this situation, after he left Al-Ta'if, he sits by a tree, catching his breath. He's been running for a few miles. And who would see him? Two of his worst enemies, two from the kuffar of Quraysh. They hate him, but they see him in this miserable condition. Even those tough-hearted people, they felt sympathy with him. They said, you know what? This man has been really humiliated. They sent a servant, one of their slaves, and they told him, go and give him some food. Give him some water and some food. The little boy comes to the Prophet ﷺ, give him the food. And the Prophet ﷺ, he puts his hand and he says, Bismillah. The boy said, what you just said. So the Prophet ﷺ looks at him and he said, I said Bismillah in the name of Allah. So the boy looks at those words, those people from this area don't say those words. So guess what? The boy, the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what's your name? He says, my name is Addas. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, where are you from, Addas? So he says, I am from Nineveh. Remember the story of Yunus alayhi salam? Everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدَرٍ. Everything was planned exactly the way it should be. So the Prophet ﷺ smiles at this little boy and he says, this is Balad al-Rajul al-Salih Yunus. This is the city of Yunus alayhi salam. This is the city of Yunus. So Addas looks at him. He says, where did you know this man from? No one knows about Yunus in this area. They are worshipping idols. There's not even a Christian. No one knows about these things here in this land. So the Prophet ﷺ looks at him and he says, Ya Addas, he was a prophet and I am a prophet. So now Addas goes down and kisses the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. What is the message that I get from this story? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Muhammad, Ya Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you wanted to go to the people of Al-Ta'if, to the elites of Al-Ta'if, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to deliver the message to this slave. taught this at this point. You planned, and all your plan, maybe, and this is what we all should be thinking of. Sometimes you plan, you work hard, and things don't go the way you planned for. And we start to say, why is this happening? This is happening not because you're a bad person, not because, there is something wrong. This is happening because exactly this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants it to be. And this is exactly the best way for you. The best of it. Sometimes you apply for a program, you apply for a job, you do everything, you get the references, everything is aligned, everything, you know that you're getting this job. You don't get it. For some reason. You get late, some stupid reason. And then you start to blame everything around you. Oh, if I wasn't late for this appointment, I would got this, if my car didn't stop at this point, I would got the job and my life would have changed. Your life wouldn't have changed because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners. And the only difference between a true believer and someone who believes in, cause and effect, is that a true believer, he does his best. He uses all the reasons that he can do, but the effect, what happens after, he knows that this is out of my hand. I do my part, but what happens after is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I rest assured. And this is the concept of tawakkul, reliance. Because a lot of people don't understand how is tawakkul. Tawakkul is not something that you do with your hand, or it's you forget, you work hard, you do your part. But the tawakkul is something in your heart. You rest assured. After you did your part, no matter what comes your way, alhamdulillah, it's good. Everybody's looking at it and they think this is a disaster. You failed your course. But inside you did your part. You worked hard. And at this point, this is for the best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has another plan for me. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من النبي بعده سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وعلى كل الصحابة أجمعين وعلى تابعين وتابعي التابعين بإحسان يوم الدين. وبعد إخوتي في الله أحبكم في الله. Inshallah, I'm going to wrap with one beautiful hadith, and for many years, I think about this hadith and try to find what's the point. But as you grow and you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is planning things, you start to understand why did the Prophet ﷺ said such a few lines. The Prophet ﷺ said, إذا قامت القيامة وفي يد أحدكم فسيلة فليغرسها. The meaning is, if it's the day of judgment and you've seen the sun coming from west and it's today the last day and the world is doomed, this whole world will be destroyed, and you're planting a tree, finish planting this tree. Don't say, there's no point. It's the last day. Why am I planting the tree? It's the day of judgment. And the reason why we do this, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to hold you accountable for the consequences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقُلْ يَعْمَلُوا. Just work, just act, do your part. فَسَيَرَ اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ. Even if your work has been unseen in this world, you don't see the fruit of your work, you're working for the MSA at your campus, your university, and no one is coming to the programs, and no one is listening, you're going to a da'wah program, and no one is following you, it's not your problem. Your role is to do your part. See and think about it every morning. What I should be doing today? Regardless what's the outcome, regardless what's the consequences. Unfortunately, it's just because we're living in a world that everything is judged by the outcome. We are in an outcome, especially you here, guys. If your grades at the final exam are not, may Allah give you all success. If it's not good, your professor is not going to say, I see you studying really hard and I'm going to give you, a boost. I know you're working hard. They don't do this. If your grades represent what you have done. So if you got sick the day of exam, they say bad for you. It's your luck. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't do this way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is holding you accountable for what you have done. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all among those who will listen to what's said and follow the best of it. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use us in this world to the best and to the best of humanity and to the best of mankind. اللهم اجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون احسنه. اللهم ارنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم يا ربنا ولا تدع لنا في جميعنا هذا ذنبا الا غفرته ولا دينا الا قضيته ولا مريضا الا شفيته ولا محتاجا الا عافيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا